the last two times in the past century that we saw major democratic change, progressive change for the better, was in the early 30s with FDR when he had a Democratic Congress after the disaster of Herbert Hoover. And then we saw in the 60s, you had LBJ, but Vietnam basically undermined everything. Now we have progressive leadership at the House level, progressive leadership at the Senate level, and a progressive president. There are high hopes riding. What do you think we'll be able to get done on these larger national issues in the first year or 2 years?
I think your history is exactly right, Corey, and I think it's a good prognosis. I think we are going to see the most significant set of improvements in the quality of life of Americans, to the extent that public policy can help those. Obviously, much of what affects the quality of our lives are private sector decisions and personal decisions. But to the extent that they can be helped along by the appropriate public sector decisions, we're going to have them. I think you're going to have the best set of advances in sensible public policy since the New Deal. And as bad as the economy now is, it's not a worldwide depression. And I am hoping that we can fairly soon be out of Iraq. We still have the difficult issue about how to deal with Afghanistan, which has deteriorated some, and in which a purely military approach clearly is not going to be the right way to go. But I do think that we have the real potential to do some good things here, because it's two things. It is a Democratic president, House, and Senate. Now, Bill Clinton also had that, but Bill Clinton had that in the teeth of a prevailing conservative wind. You still had in the 90s the view that the appropriate role for government was to get out of the way of capital, that you should not tax capital, you should not regulate it, you should not restrict its free flow internationally, and it will take care of you. It will give you a smooth economy as long as you don't overregulate. It will make everybody wealthy as long as you don't intervene in decisions. And even, we were told, it would help democratize the world. Now, the view that all you need for sensible public policy is to stay out of the way of capital has encountered a terrible problem, reality. Virtually every one of those claims has turned out to be either inaccurate or greatly overstated. And so what you now have, unlike what Bill Clinton faced, because he did face a prevailing conservative ideology, which to some extent he furthered. Of all the things that Clinton did, the one that troubled me the most in office was when he said in the State of the Union, the era of big government is over. One, because we've never had, in my judgment, too much government, maybe a little bit at the New Deal. We've had too little in most of the important areas. And secondly, he sort of denigrated the notion of government. Barack Obama takes office when people know that we have terrible economic inequality, that public policy has made it worse, and that public policy has got to try to diminish inequality if we're to function better as a society. It is also very clear to people that it was the absence of sensible regulation, particularly in the financial sphere, that caused this terrible crisis, and that you also need increased regulation in the environmental area to deal with the terrible crisis of global warming, and you have a military intervention that everybody now recognizes was a bad idea. Not everybody, but a large number do. So the stage is set for him, not just in terms of congressional majorities, but in terms of political support.
And now it looks like there was a little hiccup in the process, but Treasury Secretary-designate Geithner, who was the president of the Fed in New York and has worked with Secretary Paulson on this program, do you see him taking sort of a different direction than Secretary Paulson took in working with these $350 billion worth of funds?
Yes, and they understand that they need Congress. One, I think they want to do it this way, but whether they want to do it or not, the fact is that they do think that the economy got to be so bad under this, let capitalism do whatever it wants, that the financial system dug itself such a deep hole that there may need to be more intervention to get them out of it. They also understand, I've told them this as chairman of the Financial Services Committee, Senator Dodd has told them this, others, the Speaker has told them this, members of the committee that I chair have told them this. If they don't do a substantial amount to rebuild public confidence, they will not have the tools that they think they'll need going forward. And we have told them what they need to do that. First of all, in an exact opposite move from the Bush people, they've got to use a lot of this money to prevent foreclosures from happening. Yep. Secondly, if they do provide money to financial institutions, it has to be pursuant to an agreement in which the financial institution says, okay, you're giving me X billion dollars. I will use it in the following ways. I will relend 80% of it. I will use X to bolster my capital. it will not be used for acquisitions. It will not be used for dividends. And they understand that. And here's what I think they understand and what I think needs to be made explicit. And it really, as I was mulling this over, decided last Friday at the Boston Federal Reserve to make it explicit. And I plan to, if I can get to Davos, the World Economic Forum, legislative schedule may keep me back, but I'm trying very hard to get there. I want to tell the kind of people who go to Davos, the kind of people I meet at the Federal Reserve, the people who would think of themselves as the economic elite, the following. There's never, in my experience, been a sharper divide between the political and economic opinions of the average citizen in this country and those of the small number of people at the top of the pyramid. And the people at the top of the pyramid better understand that the great bulk of Americans are no longer licensing them to go and do what they think is necessary to provide assistance to these top institutions. Here's the deal. The average citizen sees Citicorp and AIG and these other institutions getting help. Now, the reason for that help is to help the whole economy, and I agree with that. But it is clearly going to this one set of institutions at first. At the same time, they see themselves getting unemployed and not getting unemployment in many cases or having it run out. They lose their health care.
Foreclosure.
They're foreclosed. Their property's foreclosed. The kids have to drop out of college. The kids can't afford a community college or a state university, much less one of the private universities. So the weakness of the social safety net in America is an obstacle to the kind of economic intervention that the economic financial institution policymakers want. And what I'm saying to them is this: you are very lucky that you now have a president who understands that, and a Congress that wants to say that when you lose your job, you don't lose your health care. Or you're told, yes, you can have health care. A friend of Jim's was just told that when he lost his job, he was let off because of an institution that has problems. Oh, yes, you can continue to have your health care for $900 a month. So on the one hand, you lose your job. On the other hand, you're told if you come up with $10,000 a year, where you're going to get that, you can keep having your health care. Until we fix that, then the average citizen is going to say, hey, what are you giving the money to them for? So they have this choice. We are now in a position where we are seen as providing direct help to a handful of powerful financial institutions and denying similar help to Americans who are the victims of those financial institutions' decisions. One of two things is going to happen. Either we're going to stop being able to intervene with the financial institutions, which I think would be a mistake, because if we do that right, that's important for the economy, or we're going to have to start extending help to the average citizen. I've been trying for years to get the Republicans and the business people to understand it. Some did, including Hank Paulson, which is why I admired him and agreed with him until the end. But as I said, they're very lucky, both in terms of providing a social safety net that'll give us the political basis for this, and that would include good globalization. I don't want to shut America off from the rest of the world, but you're not going to have trade policies going forward if some people benefit from the increased trade and others lose their jobs with no adequate replacement. We're also going to put regulation in there. So I think this is going to be, as with Franklin Roosevelt, to go back to your original premise, an example of liberal Democrats saving capitalism from its own mistakes.